Welcome to episode 38 of In Touch with iOS, a podcast for sharing tips, apps, and gear for iPhone and iPad, along with related technologies that give us using iOS in a fun, productive, and meaningful way. I am your host, Dave Ginsburg, and I am joined by my friend and IT pro, Brian Gray. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Dave.
So I guess this is new for us. We're actually recording this at the Jamf User Conference, or they call it JNUC.
Yep.
So we'll be talking about that in a little bit. If anybody doesn't know what Jamf is, Jamf's a product that's a very popular product in the enterprise mostly field, but they also have a product for consumers too. It's called Jamf Now, and we're going to touch a little bit about that more so than the enterprise, since I don't think anybody's going to be too interested in that as far as our audience goes. So
healthcare and education too.
Yeah, that's right. Healthcare and education.
Yeah.
But we'll touch upon that in just a minute. But for the listeners, why don't you give the listeners a little bit of background on you and how we know each other and all that fun stuff, so everybody knows who you are, so when they listen, they know you know what you're talking about with Apple.
I know what I'm talking about. I think I do.
Yeah.
Gosh, my Apple experience goes back about 30 years almost.
Wow, 30 years.
30 years. I'm old school. I remember System 6 and
holy cow.
Yeah, those were the days. I miss those days. Things were much simpler back then.
I don't know about that,
but hardware was much more expensive. So yeah, I've been supporting Macs since the early 90s, I guess. My first job out of school was a Mac network administrator for a big telecommunications company that is no longer around. Is no longer around. Or they were, I think, absorbed by some bigger fish or something. But that was after I had left. And I've been in the field for over 25 years. I work with Dave now. We work for the same company. We've known each other probably
16 years,
about 16 years or so. And this is the first time we're ever doing a podcast. So.
I know, and this is the first time you're ever doing a podcast.
This is my first podcast ever.
So this is something different for you, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So, we are live at the recording live, I should say. We're not actually live at the Jamf conference.
God.
We're in my hotel room actually doing this recording, so it's good.
Cramped up at one of those hotel tables.
Yeah, but we got the Mike said he was very surprised how I brought all this equipment.
I don't know how we got it through security.
Yeah, well, TSA Pre is your friend.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's going to be a lot of fun here. So we really want to touch upon the news, and we got a couple topics we're going to hit upon, especially the one topic which I'm kind of perturbed about. You have a Google Pixel 3, and you're an iPhone guy.
I
What's
do.
up
I'm
with that?
I'm an iPhone guy, So, I'm an iPhone guy at heart. I stood in line on, June 29th, 2007?
Yeah. Well, hold that
very
thought.
first one.
Hold that thought. We'll get to that. So
okay.
We'll talk about when we talk to the Pixel. But let's first dive into the news a little bit here. One of note was there was an iCloud services outage I think was it today or yesterday? I believe it was.
I thought it was earlier today, but I could be wrong.
No, it was today actually, because I'm looking at the sites here. Apple admitted and acknowledged there were several iCloud issues across several of their services. So everybody was freaking out on Twitter, of course, and panicking in the news stories. So, but it seems like it's back, and they've been able to fix the problems, that I think it happens.
Was it iMessage in there as well? Because I would imagine that would bring the world to a screeching halt.
I think it just says iCloud, so I'm not sure seeing whether or not it was a problem with iCloud with iMessage or not. I didn't notice any iMessage issues with sending texts throughout the day today. So
I would know.
As we record this was on the birth of the iPod, which I'll hit that in a second.
Yes.
So be aware of that. That's a big thing as far as that happening. It was kind of a rare thing, but it happens. But speaking of birthdays, today is, as we record this, October 23rd. If we go back in history, October 23rd, 2001, the first iPod was announced by Steve Jobs, and it was in the small town hall.
Yeah.
I think that video is still on YouTube to this day. You can watch that, and it's interesting to see that many years ago that the revolution started with the music player known as iPod.
The iPod, yeah. I think, I remember that. I think I was 4 at the time. Was I?
Yeah, I thought you were 6.
Yeah, maybe 6. I remember that very well. In fact, I remember watching it and being even kind of maybe slightly disappointed, thinking, yeah, is Apple really going to go in this direction? I think a lot of people felt that way.
Yeah.
And, we're all proved wrong. It was a new direction for Apple. It just seemed almost, it was one of those moments where you're just like, what are they doing? Because they had been so focused up until that point with just, Steve Jobs had his box. He had the PowerBook, the Power Mac, the iBook, and the iMac, and that was their product line. So he kind of threw the iPod in there, and within a couple of years, I think when they finally brought it over to the Windows side and went with USB, that's when things really took off. So but I can't believe it. It's been that long. It's been a really long time.
Now we're almost to say that the iPod is probably close to death. I mean,
do they sell?
They still have the iPod Touch.
The iPod Touch.
It hasn't been updated in probably at least 4, maybe 5 years.
Yeah, I thought there would have been a bigger market for the iPod Touch, especially after the iPhone came out.
For people who want a device like an iPhone but not spend the iPhone price tag.
Yeah, exactly.
It's definitely something that life has changed. I mean, the iPhone is the thing to have, and I think most people nowadays are perfectly fine, happy with the iPhone at this point. So as far as being a music player,
yeah, I think the reason why maybe the iPod Touch has kind of fallen a little bit is just because kids are getting phones much earlier. I mean, I think the iPod Touch was a great solution for a kid who wanted an iPhone, and the parents didn't feel they were old enough to have an iPhone. And then I think that the iPad kind of, took that place, when that came out, because then they could have an iOS device and not have a phone.
Yeah, exactly. So, but here we are today.
Now we're giving like 4-year-olds phones.
We are. They're getting iPhones. Yeah, probably iPhone 4S or 5. But
I just bought my 7-year-old a 10s.
No, you did.
No, I didn't. I'm just kidding.
No, you did not.
No.
And your wife's probably gonna be listening and go, wait, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah, no, he doesn't have a phone at all.
Yeah, no, too young. So anyway, let's move on. This story caught your eye. It was Facebook Messenger. They did an update, and they really have simplified the interface on the Facebook Messenger. I know not a lot of us like having the use of Messenger. I'm not a huge fan of it, but it is popular.
It is. I'm not a fan of Facebook. I'm not a fan of Facebook Messenger, although
you're back.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other story. For now. Facebook Messenger it was a really good service when it started out, and it was very clean. It was probably the best thing next to iMessage.
Yep.
And it's turned into a big bloated monster. It's terrible.
Yeah.
For messaging, it's still good if you can actually find the messaging part of it. But I guess they've simplified it now. They've kind of cut back on a lot of the unnecessary, or I like to call stupid, features. And hopefully it's a little more focused. Now, I haven't seen it yet. I've seen screenshots of it. I think they previewed it in May. I think they said it was coming, and they talked about how they were working to simplify it. And I guess it hit the App Store and the Play Store today, although I haven't really seen the updates come across my phones.
Yeah.
So I'll be curious to see if it's improved.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Like I said, not a lot of people. I guess there's a lot of people still use it.
I think a lot of people use it. I think internationally, a lot of people use it.
So. And of course, so as we record this, the Apple event was announced. That's going to be happening on October 30th. I'm pretty excited about that. I'll be recording my reaction time episode like I always do with Mr. Mike Potter and for Mac Guys Only crew. So you have to listen to that to hear what I have to say along with the rest of us, and as we react to everything that's announced. For sure, they're really pretty much have confirmed that the announcement's going to include and unveil 2 new USB-C equipped iPad Pros, is what they're saying, with better displays. They're going to have a new design Apple Pencil, they're saying. It's going to happen there as well. and of course Macs, which we don't talk too much about Macs in here, but they will have Macs, including a lower price MacBook and probably a Mac Mini and iMac processor update.
I'm not going to hold my breath on either
we'll
one
see
of
how
those.
that goes. But the interesting rumor was out there, and I thought this was interesting. I thought we mentioned this is the fact they're saying potentially that there could be an iPad Mini 5 released with a much faster processor. Right now, the Mini 4 is the one that's still on the market, and it has an A8 processor. So that's
I have one.
Yeah, that's right. You do have that one.
I have one, and it actually runs really well under iOS 12. I think Apple
Oh, yeah,
made good on their promise to
for iPhone
support.
and iPad.
Yeah, and I love the smaller iPad. It's not a productivity machine for me. It's more of a I'm going to read in bed, or I'm going to flip through the news or surf the web before I go to sleep kind of device. But I think there might still be a market for it.
Yeah.
If Apple does update it, then obviously there is. Otherwise, I don't think they would even bother going there. But I mean, the new iPhone, the 6X, what do they call it? The 10S,
the 10S
Max.
and the 10R and
Yeah.
the 10S Max.
I mean, those
have.
phones are so big now that
Well,
it's
the 10S isn't bad.
no, the 10S isn't bad, but the Max, that's a big phone. That's
I'm loving it.
That's bordering on.
And I had this debate with other guests in the last few weeks that some like the small one, some like the big one. So it's really your preference.
I was really all about the iPhone 6 Plus when it came out, and I got an iPhone 7 Plus and I had an iPhone 8 Plus.
So did I.
And then I gave the 8 Plus to my wife, and she gave me her iPhone 7, and I've gotten used to the smaller phone again, and I actually kind of prefer it.
No, okay.
And
we'll talk about that in a minute. We're going to hit you up for your thoughts on the Google Pixel 3. That I'm still appalled you have one, but
hey,
no, I'm kidding. It definitely has a great. It is a great phone. Well, we'll talk about it in just a second.
Yeah.
So let's move on from the news, and we'll go into our topics. As I mentioned at the top of the show, we are recording this at the Jamf Nation User Conference, or also known as JNUC. And for those of you who don't know what Jamf is a software-based program that helps support Macs and iOS devices, whether it be in an enterprise for business, or they also have a product called Jamf Now that also allows you to be able to support your iOS devices. And it's a pretty slick product for consumers, because you can a lot of podcasts do advertise it, and it does provide some good controls that you can use to keep things in check. Whether trying to find the device beyond what Find My iPhone does, controlling what apps can be installed, especially for parental controls.
I was wondering if that would be good for that kind of thing.
So we had this is the first day of day one of 3. Actually 2.5, I guess you could say, but I guess Thursday's most of the day, so I guess we'll call it a 3-day event. So we have a keynote part due tomorrow, and then on Wednesday, and then on Thursday we have remaining sessions that we'll be attending for various topics. Majority of what we're focusing on is enterprise, because Brian and I both work in our enterprise and are going to be supporting and are starting to support Jamf. That's why we're here. But we also dabble in the Jamf Now, so it's a great product. What did you think of the keynote? I mean, there was a lot of good stuff that was.
I thought it was great. I really didn't know what to expect.
And this is your first time.
It's my first time here. I've kind of had the crash course in Jamf this year, and I feel like I feel like we know a lot now, and we're really familiar with the product. But I wasn't very familiar with the company or the community that's around it.
Oh my
gosh. I was blown away by
incredible.
that.
If anybody's not familiar with Jamf, go to jamf.com and take a look at it. There's the Jamf Nation is the support group that's out there, and not only do they support Macs, they support iOS devices. You could probably go to that site and be able to find out any question you might have about an iOS device, because they do offer a lot of great support on there. There's 70,000 members of the Jamf Nation out there that are always constantly supporting.
I had no idea it was that big.
They have something like 18,000 customers now that they've got. And I mean, granted, the majority of that base is probably Mac centric, but they are supporting both. The Pro product does support both iOS and Mac, so it's just pretty incredible. But there was a lot of great. I mean, they had the CIO of IBM.
Yeah, that was fantastic. His presentation was incredible.
Incredible, and he actually came up with the concept of getting them Macs at IBM. A year and a half later, he's promoted to CIO. So
Yeah,
he must have did something right. But we won't get into too much of that detail.
I just think just seeing him on stage, though, it's pretty obvious why he got that job. I mean, this guy's he's got his stuff together.
So, but it's a great product, and we who knows? Maybe in a future episode, I might actually go a little deeper into what Jamf Now does. But I wanted to just touch upon why you and I are together here, and what we are involved with Jamf. So, but it's great stuff. So
it's a way to manage devices, either in a school environment,
education,
enterprise, healthcare systems.
That's their three core markets: is education, enterprise, and healthcare. And we've talked to a lot of people across all three disciplines. It's interesting to see, like schools in the education market. I mean, I know people that are supporting almost 200 or 300 iPads at a school, and many of you are involved with the school support and doing a lot of that stuff, or even seeing your kids. If you have kids, they're getting these iPads. That's what they do. I mean, it's not easy. It's quite a challenge to keep those supported and make sure they are locked down. They're installed with the right stuff. You don't want them to be able to do things that you can normally do with your own device. So it's really a good mechanism to keep things in control and keep things managed. That's really what the key word is: managed.
Yeah, I think this year Dave and I have been up to our noses in locking down Apple products. So I think we've been to every corner to lock these things down.
Yep.
So it's a challenge. It's a fun challenge, though, and Jamf is a great tool for simplifying that whole process. It's
all right. So we teased it. We teased it long enough. So I cannot believe that you went ahead. And you actually started with the Google Pixel 2 XL. I
started with I had a 2 XL,
but you bought this to dabble. You were because you had the iPhone 7. Oh no, you had what was the one? You had the iPhone 8 originally. And
I had the 8 Plus, and my wife she had a 7, and she wanted an 8 Plus, and I thought, well, I really want to check out the Pixel phones. I'm hearing all this stuff about them. I don't really know all that much about Android, and I'd like to have some knowledge because, if you're going to trash talk something, you got to know what you're talking about. But not that I was trash talking Android. I actually think Google's stock Android is actually really great. But the Pixel phones, I was very intrigued. My son, who used to work for Apple.
Yes, he did work for Apple.
He worked for Apple for 6 years and now works for Facebook.
Should you be telling people this?
I probably shouldn't be. We might have to edit that out. But he works for a company that's owned by Facebook. But
that's
so
more
he was really interested, and we both kind of took the plunge and said, we're gonna buy these and we're gonna see what it's like. And I really, really liked the Pixel 2 XL.
It is a nice phone.
It was a great phone. There were certain criticisms as far as the device goes. The screen was not great, and I'm sure you remember, when the models first came out in the end of, 2017?
I think so, yeah.
There was a lot of issues with burn-in, with the screens I felt like they almost had like a gritty kind of look to them. Yeah. I mean, they weren't bad. They were not iPhone standard, screens. So I've been using the Pixel 2, not as really my primary phone because I still have an iPhone, since about May. And I wasn't planning on getting a Pixel 3 at all. But what it came down to is that it was pretty much an even swap with the trade-in.
Right.
So I figured, why not do it? And to be honest with you, I wanted a smaller version of the Pixel because the 2 XL, when you have the iPhone 7, just seems monstrous. I wanted phones that were kind of comparable in size. Yeah. So I went with the 3, and I got it last week, and I have to say it is a very big step up from the Pixel 2. The screen is beautiful. The build quality is absolutely...
I'm impressed. I mean, it's a nice phone.
Yeah, I mean, the glass back, it's got kind of this matte glass back that's it feels really nice in the hand. The camera is... I've been kind of busting Dave up a little bit on this trip because I keep
we
taking pictures with my Pixel 3, and I'm like, look how great this.
We're keep comparing our pictures.
But Dave, look how great this picture is, and then he'd take one with his
city
10.
of Minneapolis, and
look,
yours. That looks great.
I do have to say the Pixel 3 pictures do look better.
They
look better. Admit it, Dave.
They look a little better.
Admit it. He won't admit it.
I'm not going to admit it because I'm an iPhone.
I'm an iPhone user too, but I can admit, it's like I admit
I see a slight edge to it, but I think that it still has a lot of good, good things.
It's a great phone. I think my problem with Android, not just specifically with the Pixel, is that Google just really dropped the ball on messaging, and they really still have not figured it out. SMS is just terrible.
Yeah.
It's absolutely terrible. So you have to go for another option. I mean, yes, Google's trying to solve this problem with RCS and with the universal profile, but the carriers in the U.S. are really slow to adopt it.
That's the problem.
That's a big problem. T-Mobile's been promising it. Now they swear that we'll have it by the end of the year, but they also swore we'd have it by the end of June.
Well, but the problem is Google's been very insistent that they want exclusivity, or they want to get all these carriers signed on board. Right now, it's what is it, AT&T and Verizon, or is it just Verizon?
No, T-Mobile. I mean, I think they're all on board.
They're all on board that they can get the Pixel straight out from directly to the carrier. Are you talking about?
Oh, you're talking about. I'm talking about RCS. I'm talking about rich communication.
I'm sorry.
Like their iMessage solution,
gotcha.
Which is essentially supposed to be the next generation of SMS, and it will have things like you can see when the other person's typing.
Yep.
It'll go over the data network, and it's a big promise, and it'd be great if it all comes true. But it's taking a long time to get there, and I'm not 100% confident. Funny enough, I read recently that was originally Apple's plan for iMessage,
and it never came to be
because they just couldn't get the carriers on board, probably.
Right. Yeah,
but
sure.
iMessage, I think I have a lot of criticisms of iMessage, but it is, especially in the States, it's ubiquitous, and everybody I know uses iMessage. And when you message them from your Android phone, you can hear the groans. It's just
they've become the green bubble.
And it's not. So I've been looking at other messaging services. I've been using WhatsApp, which I had never used before.
And I used it previous for like when I was at a convention a number of years ago, or a conference, I should say. And it worked out really well because everybody was on the same platform. We were able to reach each other very easily. And that was going to be one of our app reviews. So we're kind of a segue to just being an app review too, is in addition to the communications part of Android. But it's a great app, and it really is.
Well, it's a much bigger messaging platform than iMessage. I mean, on a global scale. And I can see why. The problem, my only criticism really of WhatsApp is that it looks real dated. iMessage is real clean except for that ridiculous app drawer or whatever they've added to it, which I don't like, and you can't hide it. WhatsApp it works really, really well. It works for groups really well. It's just it needs a facelift. It needs to look like it was developed in 2018 and not 2008. But otherwise, it's a great service. I managed to get people I know to actually use it, which is always the hard thing.
I mean, I was using it, and I had uninstalled it for I think the last time I used it was like in 2015 when I was at the Microsoft Ignite conference in Chicago. So, but then I went and used it again as I realized, man, this is cool. And then I go, when you open up the WhatsApp app, it shows all your contacts that are using it as well. So if you have their phone number in your contacts list, I have a whole slew of contacts that they use WhatsApp as well. Even our friend of the podcast, Barry Falk, he has it, and I reached out to him. Hey, you still WhatsApp? You still use WhatsApp? Oh yeah, of course, I use it all the time. So
a lot of people. Has more users, I think, globally than any other messaging platform. And it's interesting though, because when I told friends, that I'm not going to be on iMessage, I got an Android phone, I'm trying to use that for a while, and they all say the same thing. What do I have to download? What are you going to make me install on my phone now? And it is, you just, and I don't blame them. You feel like a real, idiots saying, "Oh, the only way to communicate with me now is to actually download this other app that you're only going to use to talk to me." And it sounds so narcissistic, but but
so that's one of the flaws with Android, between Android and iPhone, and we've always known that. But really, what is your impressions of this phone otherwise? I mean, do you think? I mean, would you switch permanently? I mean, that's my question.
I don't think I could switch permanently.
Okay.
If there was, and I will admit this, if Apple made iMessage for Android, I think I could easily switch.
Okay.
There are apps that I really would miss because the quality of iOS apps is
second to none.
Yeah.
I mean, I was just belly aching about it to you the other day. I mean, just seeing, I'm watching on your phone, and I've seen on my old phone how many apps get updated constantly in Android in the Google Play Store. I mean, there must have been one day.
Yeah.
I probably saw on my old phone that there was like 59 apps waiting to be updated. Because there's a lot of times I don't turn my old phone on for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So I was like, holy cow. I mean, I know there's times with iOS it's the same thing. You turn it on the next morning, I got 22 apps ready to update.
Yeah.
So, but I know they both platforms deal with it, but it seems to me that Android does it more.
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's interesting is back in, I think it was 2012, I spent a couple of months with the Nexus 4, which is still one of my favorite phones of all time.
That was a great phone.
I loved that phone. The problem is that the quality of Android apps at the time was terrible.
Oh, yeah, they're bad.
And it was so hard to find equivalent Android apps to what you were using on iOS. It's much easier now, and the quality of Android apps it's pretty impressive compared to what it was like when I was using the Nexus 4. But there are certain iOS apps, that it's really hard to.
Right,
There's some apps that are exclusive. My wife and I, we use Things for everything. You know what I mean?
That's a Mac.
I
Mac
mean,
and iOS
our
only.
shopping lists, our to-do lists, everything. We share an account, and everything goes into Things. And it pains my wife when I'm on my Pixel and I go to the store and she's like, I said, can you send me a screenshot of Things so I can see what to buy because I've left my iPhone at home? So it's hard to get away from it. I mean, you're kind of sucked into the.
Especially we both are in the Apple ecosystem for so long. It's so hard to really.
I mean, my Apple ID goes back to 1999. Well, actually, January 2000 when iTools came out.
I mean, I have a .Mac.
Yeah.
Email, so.
Yeah.
Some other apps that are really a standout that don't have good equivalent to Android apps is podcasting apps. There's not a very good podcasting app available in the Android world, at least the ones I've not found. Google just came out with a podcast app not too long ago.
Yeah,
it's not that great.
It's not that great.
It's like the Apple Podcast app, really.
Yeah, it's not. It's okay. Pocket Cast is pretty good.
Pocket Cast is
on
good,
Android. It's pretty good.
$4 you got to buy it, but no, it's good. No, Pocket Cast is one of the ones that I would
Don't be
recommend.
one of those people that complain about the price of apps.
Oh, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, but some of our listeners, they don't want to spend money. They want free apps.
I sound like an old man when I start going off on those rants. It's like back in 1989, I paid $600 for Microsoft Word.
That's right.
And now people complain that Scrivener costs $40.
Yeah. Oh my God. Now we have to do an Office 365 subscription.
Oh my God. You got to pay $6 a month.
Oh, that's going to kill you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, no, I mean, I'm not. Believe me.
Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn.
No, believe me, I'm not one to scale back spending money on apps. But I mean, I consistently keep a good size balance in my App Store account that I'm always buying. So
this reminds me of one of the things I really like about Android is that Google has this rewards app. And it pretty much what it does is every once in a while it sends you a survey, and they're really short, but they pay you, and that goes into your, whatever the equivalent is, store credit for the Play Store.
Right.
So I mean, I think I've racked up about $29.
Nice.
I know, and I buy stuff.
You could buy Pocket Cast for me now, right?
I probably could. Here, I'll send it over to you. Right now.
No.
But yeah, I mean, so I don't think I've ever paid for an Android app just because I constantly have this cash flow from the Play Store.
There's also another interesting feature you and I've been talking about the last day or two is that built-in quote-unquote Shazam feature in Google, the Google OS that they had.
That's another
And
thing.
tell her what you do. You fool people all the time. I know the name of this song.
Yeah, it has the Pixel has this kind of ambient screen where the screen's on all the time, and it shows you certain information. And one of the things, if there's music playing, it will tell you at the bottom of the screen the song and the artist. It's like built-in Shazam.
Hello, Apple. You need to do this with the Shazam. You own Shazam. You own Shazam free and clear. You should be looking at the development of this.
So my wife and I will go out, and we'll be out to dinner, and there'll be music playing, and I'll look down and I'll be like, "Boy, I really love this song." She's like, "You know this song?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's such and such by so and so." She's like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, "Just a music savant,
Yeah. So yeah, it's that feature I was kind of impressed with. So.
Yeah, it works pretty well.
So bottom line, what's your thought of the Pixel 3? And like I said, I think your final answer really has been you're lonely missing your iPhone, I think.
Well, I think it's interesting. I got an email this morning from somebody who said, "Hey," he's an Android user, and he said, "Hey, I heard you got a Pixel 3. Yeah. I'm on the fence. I'm either going to get a Pixel 3 or I'm finally going to switch over to the iPhone. Mm-hmm. What do you recommend?" And my response to him was, I'll see you on Monday and I'll show you the Pixel 3. Sure. But if you are used to using Android and you've never used iOS, you can't go wrong getting a Pixel 3. Yep. It's probably a huge step up from what you already have. But if you want to go the iOS route, I mean, definitely, you can't go wrong with an iPhone either. But if you want to stay in the Android world, hey, the Pixel 3 is a great phone.
Yeah.
I think it is the Android equivalent to the iPhone, as far as quality goes. Samsung builds really nice hardware, but their software is just terrible. I mean, I think so anyway.
Oh, Samsung.
It's just terrible. Yeah. But stock Android it's really, really good. Right. And when you have good hardware to go with it, I don't think you can go wrong. But if you're entrenched in the Apple ecosystem, then it's hard to get away from iOS.
It is, and I would have a very difficult time.
I'm an Apple guy at heart. I mean,
we both are.
I have a Surface Book laptop and I have a MacBook Pro. I have to know both with the phones. I have to know both.
I'm the same way, but I have to know both as well.
At the end of the day, I always steer back to Apple. That's where I'm most comfortable, I think.
Speaking of Apple, good transition and good review of that product.
Are you going to bring up the 10R?
The 10R, yeah.
Or the XR?
I call it 10. It's supposed to be the 10R. So the 10R was on pre-order on the 19th. That was this past Friday. It's going to be available in stores on this coming Friday, the 26th, as we record this. So if you have pre-ordered it, that's awesome. You're gonna have a new phone here coming soon. So Apple actually did an interesting thing. They released 13 different allowed 13 different outlets to do the review of it, because of course most of these media outlets have they're probably a demo unit that they get to play with and learn and be able to do a write-up on it. And Apple actually did an actual press release today, and they actually took quotes out of each one of these articles, and so really I think the bottom line of the X10R is, oh my God, it's so much cheaper.
Yeah. Yeah,
it's $250 cheaper than the base model 10s. So really, what's the price differences? I mean, you had something you want to say on the 10R before I go on to that?
No. Well, I was going to say, when did they lift the embargo? Was it last night?
It was either last night or this morning.
Well, it's interesting
because
from what I remember, Steve Jobs used to do that. He used to like to throw quotes from reviews out there. You don't see Tim Cook do that as much.
No, he doesn't.
He just usually says,
but they did it in the Apple Press, though. Press release.
Yeah. So this is, I think that is something new. I don't remember them doing that, at least under Tim Cook.
Yep. So really, the price difference between and we're actually in the show notes we'll have a link to The Verge, one of our favorite reviewers and actually one of the big key guys at The Verge, Nilay Patel, wrote the article about this, and he basically said the iPhone X10R it's better than good enough. So like I said, Apple answered it with $250 in reduction in price. The difference between the 10R and the top of the line 10S is the 6.1 inch screen liquid Retina display versus the 5.8 inch OLED.
Liquid Retina display. Does that mean what does that mean? Does it spill off of the phone?
Yeah, it must
tilt it the wrong way.
Apart from the display, the 10R and the 10S are pretty much similar. They both share the same A12 Bionic processor. Both have smart HDR. Both run on iOS 12, of course. Gesture controls.
Wait a minute. They both come with fast chargers too, right?
No, they don't. Of course not. It didn't mention that.
That's something that makes me insane. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I agree. That Apple is still including a 5-watt charger with all.
I mean, the most expensive phone is over $1,400, and then if you want to fast charge it.
So, as I said, the processors, it's got wireless charging capabilities, and even has the forthcoming dual SIM support, which they're talking about, being able to do dual SIMs.
You talk about the eSIM and the SIM slot.
And the SIM slot,
Not a big fan of the eSIM, but
it's
a whole other story.
It could be. We talked about this in previous episodes. It could be something soon. The other thing with the 10R is colors, which is pretty awesome. I think that's fun. It's going to have white, black, blue, coral, yellow, and of course the code red. But really, the differentiating of it is not really going to be much. I mean, they say the good stuff on it is the fun colors, the competitive prices, and then of course it has great battery life. The camera is only a single lens versus a dual lens on the 10S and the 10S Max. Only one size option. And they did mention that camera does strange things sometimes. I think that was because it was called Beautygate, because they were.
Oh, that was the 10S. Was that the 10S? Where it smooths your skin?
It was smoothing your skin, right? Was that the 10S or what? I thought? Oh, that's right.
I thought it was the 10. Yeah, the 10S.
Couldn't be the 10R because no one has a 10R yet.
Yeah, the 10S was. In fact, I think Apple said they're going to fix that in a future update. So, when you have beautiful, smooth skin like me, you don't need that.
That's true.
And the Pixel 3 doesn't do that. So
that's true. So, they did a lot of detail work around the corners of the LCD, and the display. You aren't going to notice a difference.
Yeah, I've been hearing some bad things about the display, but I think as Phil Schiller came out or said to someone recently, I read that if you can't see the pixels, the screen's good enough, and I kind of agree with that. If you can't see the pixels, that's really what most people care about anyway.
Right.
I mean, most people don't even know what a color gamut is. I mean, they don't. Do you? Do you know what a color gamut is?
No, of course not. I mean, you really can't. You really can't have any flaw with as far as this screen goes. Now, a couple of things that kind of burn me a little bit. We'll talk about is repairs, repairability. $199 to replace a screen on the 10R. Yeah. But you can spend $199 and get the Apple Care that they've now increased the price like that much.
Yeah, I mean, Apple Care was originally what, like $79?
$79 and $99. I mean, I think I paid for my 10S Max. I think I paid $149. Mm-hmm. But they've increased even more on the 10R because it's very costly to repair.
Yeah, I think when you break your 10S, they just come and take your house.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. So
yeah, I've heard I've heard some crazy stories about, prices on repairs for the 10.
Yeah, all these phones, the repairability is starting to become even more and more of an issue. iFixit, the site that does the teardowns. I know they put the repairabilities on some of these phones at usually 1, 2, 0.
In fact, I think that the latest, not to change focus here, but the new Surface and the Surface laptop, I think, are just not repairable at all. I think they said it's just like it's metal and glue, and that's about all.
Yeah. And interesting, the Verge did do something. We just talked about the Pixel 3 a little while ago. They did a photo comparison between the Pixel 3 and the 10 and the 10R, and you do definitely see a difference.
You got to link to that in the show notes because the difference. It doesn't even look like the same person.
No, it doesn't. I mean, it really is a huge difference in
and
color.
To be perfectly honest with you, if you scroll back up to that first picture, I mean, she looks a lot prettier in the Pixel 3 picture, I think, than she does in the 10R picture.
I agree. And so they definitely, you could see comparisons with these photos. camera is such a vital thing with our smartphones nowadays. And
yeah, I mean, the camera is important, but I don't think the camera should, change the way you look. I think it's a good option to turn on, to opt in on, but I don't think it's something that should be the default.
Yeah. So other mention was battery life. They said that the battery lasted 13 hours under normal use, which is pretty incredible. And he wrapped it up saying, and I kind of agree with this. I'm kind of picky with my screen too. That if he had if he would pay the extra money for an OLED screen in a heartbeat, just because of just being picky about displays. And I kind of see that. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are with those as far as screen differences.
I originally became a Retina snob when the Retina displays came out.
Yeah, for the Mac.
And it just killed me to have a Mac that didn't have a Retina display after using my phone and my iPad that did.
Yep.
But now, I do notice the difference between the OLED and the LED screens. And, I have an iPhone 7 here and I have the Pixel 3. And the iPhone 7's got a great screen still. I mean, the iPhone 7 is still a great phone. But you put it next to a screen like they have on the XS and a screen like they have on the Pixel 3, which the XS, I believe, does have a better screen than the Pixel 3. But, there's a big difference. You do notice the difference.
Right. So, well, that's pretty much our discussion about the 10R. I think we're going to just go into one more topic. And you actually had an app that I wanted you to bring up since you have some good experience with it. It's a different take on taking notes, and it was the app called Agenda.
Yeah, my son turned me on to this. He's in college, and he's using this to keep track of his classes and his notes and all that other stuff. And they came out with a Mac app, and I think it won an Apple Design Award this year or the previous year. The Mac app is fantastic. They just updated it with dark mode, which looks really great. And the iOS app, they actually released after the Mac app, and there was a huge demand for the iOS app. People, I mean, when you have apps like Ulysses is another app. Right. Ulysses works on every device, the Mac version, the iPhone version, the iPad version, and they're all almost identical. I mean, you can just pick up one and go right to the other. It's Ulysses is a beautiful app. Agenda to me seems the same, where the iOS version is very close to the Mac app. Like, you don't feel like this is kind of a dumbed down or slimmed down version of the app. This feels like the app on your phone, and I really like that. It's a beautiful app.
Yeah, it looks like it. I have not used it yet. Really, and you just mentioned to me a little while ago, and I just downloaded it on my phone and iPhone.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's free to use. It's free to use. There are premium features, which, if they're worth it to you, I think it's like $24 a year for the subscription. Okay. Which, I know people really roll their eyes at subscription models and stuff. But when you have small indie developers, they need that guaranteed income to continue doing what they're doing. And if you really love an app, like Ulysses, another one. I mean, I pay every year for that because these guys work really hard and they make a really great app. And they have to stay in business, know. You want that app, you got to pay for it. And Agenda's the same way. It's completely worth the $24 a year if you use it every single day.
Gotcha.
And you're getting a lot of use out of it. So I do recommend it. It's a great app.
So we'll have a link to that in the show notes. So we appreciate
it's not available on Android.
Which is fine by me. Any other closing comments you got, Brian, before we wrap this up? We're wrapping up a little early, but it's getting a little late, but we wanted to...
it's past my bedtime.
It was getting past our bedtime, but that's okay.
I'm in my pajamas.
And we've got 2 more days worth of our Jamf conference to go here, so... but nothing else you had to...
No, I think I think we covered everything.
Okay, well, I appreciate you coming on the show. We really appreciate that. Is there a way people can get a hold of you? If there's any social media presence that maybe someone has a question for you, or...
I am a social media ghost.
You are a ghost.
I am. If you would like to get in touch with me, you know how to get in touch with Dave.
All right.
I talk to Dave every day.
No problem. Yes, if you want to be able to reach out for him. So let's close the show out here. We hope you are more in touch with iOS after hearing this episode. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcatcher and show your friends how to find us on the Apple Podcasts, on the Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, and we're even on Spotify. email your questions and comments to us at feedback@intouchwithios.com, or you can visit our website at intouchwithios.com and click on contact, or simply add a comment, and we'll definitely have a comment link on the show notes. We look forward to bringing you more useful information in future episodes. I'm Dave Ginsburg, and you can find me at DaveG65 on Twitter. Brian, again, we appreciate you being on the show.
It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And we hope you subscribe and listen to future episodes. Thanks for listening.